Has pain in the side of your knee been keeping you off the trails? It's 2026. It's time for us runners to get our education topped up on IT band or iliotibial band syndrome. Today we'll be talking about the following topics. What does IT band syndrome feel like? We'll be covering the old and the new theories about what actually produces the pain. We'll also cover the soup theory of IT band syndrome. Then we'll go over contributing training factors and contributing physical factors. In the last section, everyone's favorite, we're going to go over exercises and stretches that might help you. So what does IT band syndrome actually feel like? For me, IT band syndrome felt like pain on the side of my knee, especially when I bent it or I was running downhill. My knee was completely fine on the flats and the uphills, but it never really warmed up when I was feeling it going downhill. It just stayed the same, and sometimes it got even worse as my mileage increased. Because the pain is on the outside of the knee, IT band syndrome is confused with a few other conditions. Common mix-up of IT band syndrome include lateral meniscus irritation. This is usually more mechanical with catching, swelling, or pain during twisting. An LCL sprain, that's the lateral collateral ligament on the side of your knee. This sprain usually follows a specific incident or trauma. Or patellofemoral pain. This is pain under the kneecap, although it can feel pretty diffuse and it can be around the kneecap. It's often worse with stairs or sitting. Almost all IT band syndrome cases respond really well to rehab and structured strength training. Just a reminder, we are real people. We have telehealth options. Link is in the description. Next, we're going to go over both the old and the new theories about what produces the pain in IT band syndrome. For a long time, runners thought that IT band syndrome was caused by friction when the IT band rubbed against the side of the knee bones. The prevailing thought at the time was that the IT band was actually too tight and short. Here's some research that says otherwise. Research from Faircloud and others say that MR signal changes in the patient with IT band syndrome were present in the region occupied by the fat deep to the IT band. The IT band is prevented from rolling over the epicondyle, that's the bones on the side of the knee, by its femoral anchorage. This paper goes on to say that IT band overuse injuries may be more likely to be associated with fat compression beneath the tract, rather than with repetitive friction as the knee flexes and extends along those knee bones. Since the fat pad was associated with a layer of richly innervated and vascularized fat, and in this human study no bursa were seen. This means that the pain is coming from compression of the fat pad, not friction on the IT band itself. Compression of the fat pad is greatest around 30 degrees of knee flexion. This amount of knee flexion is really common in downhill running. The compression can be worse when combined with a weakness that leads to compensation and a lack of general strength or fitness. We'll go over more of this later on. Lots of us runners still think that it's a friction syndrome and pull out our foam rollers and try and loosen up the IT band. And the fact is that the IT band just can't be loosened. The IT band is made of fascia, which is a stiff and not very stretchy structure. It's anchored and attached directly into the femur and made to transmit force. So in essence, the IT band is not made to stretch, so let's stop stretching it. The stretches we're going to go over later are designed to stretch around it and not the IT band itself. Next, we're going to go over the soup theory of IT band syndrome. If you've had a terrible soup, you know that there's probably one ingredient too much or one ingredient too few. Your IT band is kind of like that soup. These ingredients are typically down to three big variables. These come down to knee valgus, hip drop, an increase in hip adduction, which is the leg moving inwards towards the body. As you can see here, we have a slanted belt line, hip drop. The knee is across the belt buckle, knee valgus, and the thigh is driving inward, hip adduction. Most of these three happen at the same time. When I was running in college, I had IT band syndrome, and I was trying to correct all three of these problems at the same time using gait analysis. For the entire summer, I was driving an hour and a half both ways to try and get gait analysis done, all fancy with the sensors put all around my body. We found these three issues, and in trying to retrain my gait, I found that it was less about thinking about my gait and more about building strength, which ultimately solved it. Later, we'll go over many of the exercises that I used in that program. We can go over strength all we want, but there's often also training variables, and these are downhill volume, which increases the braking load. We push past exhaustion too often, and we have an increase in mileage, elevation, and have a total load spike in our training, doing too much too soon. All of this stuff makes up our terrible IT band soup. IT band syndrome seems to pop up when many of these variables stack together. For example, if you have weak hip muscles and you do too much downhill, that can cause IT band syndrome. You may have slight knee valgus paired with a big mileage jump, or you can have hip drop when you're building for a long race. The good news is once you start fixing these variables, the whole soup becomes better and your IT band syndrome may start fading away. Let's talk about all those training variables now before we get into the physical factors. Many cases of IT band syndrome are a combination of the training variables with the physical variables. We have 3 general categories and we'll add some research in for each one of them. First, let's go over downhill running volume and the braking load that your legs experience while running downhill. For many of us training for a big hill race, we always have to have uphill for the training, but that comes with downhill. And if we're doing too much too soon, that can cause IT band syndrome. 3D motion analysis of both female and male runners showed that downhill running at 3.5 meters per second, it's about 740 per mile pace, amplifies the biomechanical risk factors associated with IT band syndrome. This shows a systematic increase for knee flexion angle at initial ground contact when your foot hits the ground, peak knee adduction angle, thigh moving inward, and peak IT band strain. Runners acutely suffering from IT band syndrome should therefore avoid downhill running for a short time. To be clear, this does not mean that you can't run hills ever again. You just need to scale down how much downhill running you're doing until you identify the factors that are causing your IT band syndrome and then start building those back up again. Our second training variable is pushing past exhaustion too often or doing too many workouts in a row. Exhaustion isn't just pace alone, it can have to do with intensity or training volume as well. So yes, too many workouts in a row can cause more exhaustion than what's needed, but it can also be longer workouts, faster workouts, or workouts with more hills. This paper shows both the exhaustion states and running speeds showed a significant effect on the IT band strain rate. The results imply that a rapid increase in the training intensity may predispose healthy runners to sustain higher IT band strain rates, which may lead to injuries such as IT band syndrome. Our third training variable is mileage, elevation, and intensity load spikes. It's not uncommon for us ultramarathoners to do a race that's our longest distance ever and then have IT band syndrome afterwards because it exceeded, technically, what our bodies could handle. What I mean by load capacity is how much mileage, elevation, and intensity our bodies can handle at one time or over a short period of time. Total load refers to mileage, and that's not necessarily mileage in a single day. It can be weekly mileage, usually over the course of 1 or 2 weeks. It can include intensity, which is your workouts. It can be faster paces than you're used to or longer workouts than you're used to. Again, usually over the course of 1 or 2 weeks. And how much elevation we're doing. So if you're suddenly doing a ton more vert than you're used to, say you're on a trip and doing a lot of mountain running, which I do every summer, and exceed my vert tolerance, this can cause IT band syndrome as well. Again, IT band syndrome can show up after one long run or a long race, but more commonly it's these factors over a week or 2. The researchers started catching on and started pulling Garmin data from a ton of runners. This study pulled Garmin data from 5,200 runners. The researchers stated that running too much before musculoskeletal structures can achieve adequate tolerance to withstand the external applied load is recognized as a major contributor to injury recurrence. Notably, a spike of more than 10% in single session running distance significantly increased the rate of overuse running-related injuries, like IT band syndrome, with the risk sharply rising when the distance more than doubled. Both of these point to load capacity. This talks about how much your body can handle, that's the musculoskeletal part of that study, and how much distance you can do in a single session without running the risk of an overuse injury. For those of you who've been resting your leg for a while and you start getting back into training, thinking everything's gonna go fine and increasing, these are where your critical mistakes can come in. All of this predisposes you to another episode of IT band syndrome. One of my favorite things to do with my patients is to get into myth busting. There's been a ton of talk in the last 10 or 15 years about shoe type and terrain changes or soft surface running. I've gotten a ton of questions on if IT band syndrome is influenced by either of those two, and the short answer is the research is limited. What we do know about different surfaces is that your body adjusts to the surface that you're on. Those who have old injuries in the ankle and the hip especially have more trouble auto-adjusting to these surfaces, and that can increase load on the knee. If you'd like a great read on footwear, we have a link in the description below. Next, we're gonna go over physical variables that affect IT band syndrome. So 2 runners can do the same downhill trail, but maybe only one of them develops IT band syndrome. If that weren't the case, we'd all have a Strava segment saying the IT band syndrome downhill. But the difference between those two runners are usually in the physical variables. When we're running to exhaustion, there's exhaustion of the lungs and exhaustion of the muscles. This section is just going to go over the muscular part. When we get close to total exhaustion, our form breaks down, and the common faults are those three factors that we talked about earlier. We talked about hip drop, where the pelvis begins to drift. We also talked about adduction, which is the thigh moving inwards towards your body, and knee valgus, which is when the knee tracks closer to the midline of your body, and this is the one that most of us have heard about. This increases compression of the fat pad, the true pain generator, with every step. The great thing is these three factors really have to do with the hip, and they can be solved with strength training. The bad news is that just stretching really isn't going to do much. Back to strength training, we know that hip strength training will help, and again, we're going to go over some of that later, but also trunk and pelvic strength training can help as well. When we talk about the kinetic chain or everything's connected, often we go bottom up, so maybe there's a problem in the ankle that's affecting the knee, or we can go top down. So for IT band syndrome, this is typically core and hip, but the core affects the hip affects the knee, and so on. Then we move on to the more obvious, which is knee and quadricep load tolerance. Downhill running demands a lot of quad strength because you're running in an eccentric pattern for your quad muscles. That means when you're running downhill, your quad is contracting, but it's also lengthening and stretching at the same time. When you see races that are all downhill, you might think, oh, that's pretty easy. But if you look at the pro runners, they're actually blowing up because their quads give out before anything else. Obviously, this has performance implications, but for you, more importantly, is when the quad fails, you compress more on that fat pad right by the IT band, causing IT band syndrome. How this can be improved, you guessed it, strength training. The key about strength training, where a lot of us go wrong, is you need to strength train with heavy weights, not light weights for a ton of reps. Program design is really crucial in this, especially when you're increasing the weight that you're using when you're also dealing with an injury. Again, if you need help with that, reach out to us. Our information's below. Lastly, your tissues and your muscles don't adapt unless you recover. And by recovery, I mean you sleep well, you eat well, which for us long distance runners usually means you eat a lot, and you get your hydration in. If you don't recover well, that means your muscles aren't going to be able to do the jobs that they're supposed to do, so your training load actually might stay the same, but you may get injured because your recovery is not topped up. Before we go over exercises, it's important to know that running combined with strength training improves running economy, force tolerance, and injury resilience more than just running on itself. A systematic review with meta-analysis showed a strength training program including low to high intensity resistance exercises and plyometric exercises performed 2 to 3 times per week for 8 to 12 weeks is an appropriate strategy to improve running economy in highly trained middle and long distance runners. In this paper, the evidence robustly shows that lower limb resistance exercise is effective for improving running economy and performance. In my experience, runners don't lift heavy enough to get those benefits. What exercises should you do? Here at Performance Place, these are ones we commonly do for IT band syndrome. Just to note, these are exercises that can fall into several different categories, so they may look similar category to category, but they achieve different goals. Single leg stance drills. Research shows that males with IT band syndrome exhibited greater hip internal rotation and knee adduction angles during the early stances of running. These exercises are great for the stance phase of running when your foot is fully on the ground and under your body. First, we have the Y stance drill. Next, we have single leg RDLs. I like to use a cable machine for this. And last, we have lateral step downs. Once you get the form down on these, make sure that you're adding weight and getting it pretty heavy in order to actually get strong. A systematic review with meta-analysis shows that strength training with high loads, plyometric training, and a combination of strength training methods may improve running economy in middle and long distance runners. The strength training methods used were for more than 3 weeks and have high loads and more than 80% of 1 rep max. Hinges primarily build posterior chain strength, so that's your glutes and your hamstrings primarily. These really help runners handle the braking loads, especially running downhill, and force absorption when your foot strikes the ground. The best hinge exercises here are hex bar deadlifts, which I think is a great foundational exercise. You can also do barbell deadlifts, especially if you don't have a hex bar. These are fantastic. And to get more specific with it, use single leg deadlift variations. In case you're thinking, I could go lighter and do more reps, stop that line of thought. Make sure that you're going heavy, safely, in order to build strength. The same paper showed that sub-maximal load training, so lightweight training, and isometric strength training seemed less effective to improve running economy in this population. Next, we have squat patterns. These are not the same as hinges or deadlifts, so make sure you pay attention to these demos. This is just a knee-dominant exercise category, so you're going to be using your quads more than your hamstrings and glutes. Some great exercise choices for runners are goblet squats. I commonly use split squats, and it's a staple in my own strength training routine. And to get nice and intense with it, use rear foot elevated split squats, or Bulgarian split squats. While you can use barbell back squats to fill the squat category, usually you need more instruction with form, so beginners take note. And as a side note, yes, the knees can go over the toes if your knee currently tolerates it. The don't go knees over toes philosophy is usually put in place by a medical provider as a temporary solution to calm down symptoms, but you need to reintroduce going knees over toes in order to handle the demands, especially of downhill running again. This should be reintroduced as soon as possible, as soon as your knee can tolerate it. Perhaps the most common thing you'll see online is single leg strength work, and it's the most common thing for a reason. Single leg strength work is excellent for strengthening both your legs, your knees, and your core all at the same time. When you're doing single leg exercises, the asymmetric load really helps tie all of those things in together. This is one of my favorite types of exercises to do with my telehealth clients because it doesn't really require a gym or heavy loads. Some examples are single leg RDLs or Romanian deadlifts and their variations. You can do controlled step downs. Again, make sure the knee is tolerating this as you do it. And we can do single leg split squats. This was in a previous category as well, but works great for that single leg strength to coordinate all those areas of your body. Last, here are my favorite stretches. Keep in mind, none of these should stretch the IT band itself because it's not stretchy and there's no point, but we're going to be stretching around it to help support the mobility in that area. Stretching the hip capsule and the hip muscles in various directions can really help. First, we have face-up internal rotation. Internal rotation really helps with hip extension. They're coupled movements, so we want to make sure that's topped up. Next, we have face-up external rotation. This can really help with hip flexion, which is useful for running uphill. Last, we have our half kneeling hip flexor stretch, but instead of holding it, we're going to make it dynamic so that we can get some hip capsule movement in this as well. Also, some great general foot and ankle mobilizations, especially if you've had past ankle sprains. This is toe threading. It's probably the weirdest mobility exercise you'll ever do. Can really help with the small bones of the foot and those joints in between getting some mobility in. Next, we have ankle pumps, which gets the joint moving. And then ankle stretching. This is usually in the form of foot dorsiflexion. So to recap, IT band syndrome is not caused by one singular thing. The key is sorting these out to figure out what variables are your problem and what you need to address. If you're sick of DIYing it and going through all these YouTube videos, we have links in the description. We work through telehealth and in person in Southern California. Shoot us a line. We have other videos in the corner and on our channel about all sorts of running injuries. Go ahead and check those out.